What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast, joined as always by the indefatigable Phil Perry. Today, we're going to talk to coaches Jerod Mayo on the defensive learning curve and the urgency to get things right. Josh McDaniels is going to go deep on some play calling and why he understands when we throw our hats at the television. Also, Kyle Van Noy on the defense and the fun quotient. It's back in the news. All that more in Tom Curran's Patriots Talk.
You can do about it.
Hey, Phil, we'll also talk a little bit about Dallas because it's a good team coming at you. How you doing, bud?
Doing great. Yeah, this matchup is going to be a lot of fun this week, but we're still combing through some of the stuff from Houston, and I thought we got some good info today on the conference calls with the coaches.
We talk about, okay, we can't go in the locker rooms anymore, and we're not face to face.
Which is not great.
No, it's not. But I do think at times the more measured approach that we have on Zoom, where a guy is a captive audience, makes that player much more engaged than he would be if he had 37 cameras at his locker and a horde of people cramming things in his face. We're able to ask better questions. We're able to get more direct answers, I think. And I love the tempo of the week now where we get, whether it's just the coordinators or all the coordinators and the assistants, to step to the mic a little bit. All that said, that's the preamble to, I just love what we got from the coaches today in terms of shooting us straight. And Phil, we look at Sunday's game and we got plenty to plow through defensively with Jerod Mayo, but start with Josh McDaniels here. We get to interrogate him. And he never shrinks from answering questions about the play calling. What was your takeaway from Sunday's game regarding the play calling?
Well, I just really liked that they showed they could be aggressive in a close game situation. You obviously you were trailing, but there were moments in that game where it was close enough where you could maybe make the argument because there was enough time left. Better idea for Mac Jones to check it down here, or maybe better idea to run quick game or go empty and just have him get it out of his hands on 3rd and 8, maybe only pick up 4 yards, but it's okay. We're playing the field position battle and we'll just try to pull this thing out at the end. And I just liked that collaboration between Josh McDaniels doing things like being willing to call 7-step drop from under center, play action shots down the field, and Mac Jones being willing to pull the trigger on those. I liked that, even though it led to a couple instances where he almost turned the ball over. I thought that was a good step in the right direction for Mac Jones. I wanted to see if Josh McDaniels felt the same way. It sounded like, Tommy, he wasn't quite as encouraged as I was. He's still in the camp of, we don't ever want to let the other team touch the football. Aggressive, right. Not aggressive. That's not for us.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because he talked about, and it's honestly goes back to the Atlanta Super Bowl. Look, even if you're behind, you don't want to be frantic. You need to be patient because you can't piss away a drive because we got to get 6 now or not, or we're in trouble. And I think it's interesting because it relates to a specific drive and a specific set during this game. The Patriots, after the punt by Johnston off his teammate's helmet, Terrence Brooks, the Patriots
former Patriot Terrence Brooks.
Yeah, he's got to be in the protocol because of that. Patriots take over at the Houston 36. And here's what I asked Josh McDaniels about what unfolded there. And here's Josh McDaniels' overall philosophy on what's going on, because this isn't just related to this drive. It's related to many drives this season as Josh and the Patriots offense get used to each other and figure out what works and what doesn't.
I would just say this. I would never call something that I didn't have confidence or faith in that could be the right call. And I have also never had a game where I've had every call be right either. And so I'm human. I know that for a fact. I make just as many mistakes as anybody else does. And the intent is always right. And because I want us to be able to do the things we're calling well. And I always will take responsibility for the execution if it's not good. That's my job. So there was that series, and then there was another series too that I wasn't super proud of either, where we get down there and just, kind of stumble around and don't have enough positive plays to continue to move it and get it in. So, I always look back on those things and try to figure out how I could have made it a difference there. Certainly those 3 plays that you're referring to were not our 3 best plays of the day. And I have to do better. And that's what I'm going to focus on trying to do. And again, give our guys the best chance to be successful in those plays. But I understand I get it from my wife. So it's, the frustration is, I understand it. I just hope I never am going to try to call a play that I feel like doesn't have a good chance to be successful. We were trying to be balanced in the game on Sunday for sure, not try to get too far away from, running the football based on our situation and circumstances, and try to do that as we went through 4 quarters. And I thought that eventually helped us. It certainly didn't help us there in that series, though.
That's an interesting answer in that, yeah, it acknowledges, as it should, it's an imprecise occupation, offensive coordinator. You're trying to predict what's going to work. You don't have anticipation of what the defense is going to do. It's kind of why you want to videotape signals and try and break them down. You want to know what they're doing. So if it doesn't work, you get back and maybe change the way you do things, which goes to your point, Phil, that they did change the way they did things as that game wore along. That was the most aggressive we've seen the Patriots, I think, in terms of saying, all right, Matt, go do your thing.
I agree with you. And I'm just looking at the numbers now, Tom, in terms of the air yards. Remember when this was the big talking point through, 2 or 3 weeks, air yards per attempt, just to give you a quick update. Mac Jones is still not anywhere near the top of the league. He's in the low 20s, but it's 7.7 intended air yards per attempt. Mac Jones is tied with Patrick Mahomes. He is 1 spot ahead of Justin Herbert, 2 spots ahead of Kyler Murray, 4 spots ahead of Dak Prescott, way ahead of Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, Matt Ryan. Like, they're being more aggressive than I think I've given them credit for. I think this game, obviously this past week, helped a lot. Again, they're down. They have to put it in the
So the New Orleans game.
The New Orleans game helped a lot. That was Mac Jones's highest air yards per attempt game, because that was a big time chuck and duck game, in my opinion. This week, there was less of that. There were a couple instances of that. Don't get me wrong. The one where they get the 3rd and 18 helmet to Mac Jones's chin was one of those, but I thought they were calculated in their taking of risk through the air. And that to me is a step in the right direction. Because Tom, this can't be, given what we've seen from this offense through 5 weeks, I don't think this can be a just throw it sideways and throw it short kind of offense if they're going to win games. They've got to put it in Mac Jones's hands. I think, unfortunately for them, I don't think they want to be here, but I think they've got to put more on him if they're going to be the team they want to be, because I don't think they can just win with defense in their running game the way a lot of us thought they might be able to going into this year.
And that part of that is entailed in the answer that Josh gave to me. It's even more entailed in an answer he gave to Andrew Callahan about trying to figure out what you're good at and having to sometimes just fold your tent and say, well, it's not going to go that way for us.
How close do you think you are through 5 weeks to learning, the things that you're best at here with as an offense?
Getting closer. There's definitely some things that I think we repeat now, and we feel pretty good in terms of our comfort level at this point. I think there's still some growing together as we work together with one another. And what I mean by that is, Mac throwing with Kendrick Bourne, Mac throwing with Nelly, Mac understanding the differences between Hunter and Jonnu. Now Brandon Bolden's in there a little bit more on 3rd down than James White, what used to be, there's still some growth there. I see the same things up front, the tight ends blocking with the tackles. Last week, it was a couple different tackles and normal. So I think just the ability to work in combination with some of the other players that we are working with in the passing game, running game, up front, what have you. I think that will continue to be a little bit of a work in progress, but schematically, I think we're trying to, settle in on some things that we feel like we know how to do. And there's always going to be an element each week of something that maybe we don't do it a lot, but we're going to do it this week more. Certainly that happened in Houston, and I'm sure it'll happen again this week against a really good defense in Dallas. So I feel better about where we're at. I think by 6 to 8 weeks, you kind of know, where you're at and what you want to, and really more than anything else, what you want to stop trying to get good at. Because that's really where you can waste your time during the season as a coach is, you went into the season with this mindset, like, I really want to be good at this. I really want to be good at this. And then you look at yourself, 6, 8 weeks in, and you're like, we're no good at this, and at that point as a coach, it's time to cut bait and just say, listen, we're good at other things. And we tried for 3 months to really make this go. And, for whatever reason, it could be a number of reasons, it's not very productive. So it's time to move forward and let the players do the things that they do best. And I think, like I said, I think we're getting closer to that.
Phil, reaction to that before we jump into Jerod Mayo on the other side of the ball.
Well, so Andrew, his question eventually got down to 12 personnel, what's going on there? And when you look at their numbers through 5 weeks, Tom, and we assumed this would be the dominant package for the Patriots this year. Number one, it's not in terms of the numbers. They've been in 11 personnel, so 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 back, more than twice as much as they've been in 12 personnel. And when they have been in 12 personnel, they have not been able to throw it well at all. Their passer rating with that group on the field is under 80. They're at 6.3 yards per attempt. They're just much more efficient. They're better offensively with 3 receivers on the field, slightly worse in the run game, but they're better passing offense with 3 receivers than they are with the 2 tight ends. And so that question to me is an interesting one because you can't say you're going to scrap 12 personnel, right? You poured too much money into that position. So they have to figure out how to get that thing going.
And maybe the beginning of seeing Jonnu Smith lined up, for instance, at fullback is the new unveiling of the next level. All right, we're going to figure this out. And I do believe they will. There's a lot here that, however, I've said they're going to figure it out. They're going to figure it out. For instance, after the Miami game, fumbles, penalties, whatever. They got a quarterback and it's a Bill Belichick coach team. It's going to figure it out. Well, 5 weeks in, we're seeing similar issues crop up, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Offense too, but more on the defensive side of the ball with miscues and substitution breakdowns and what seem to be coverage issues that don't mesh with the situation that we're looking at. So I asked Jerod Mayo, Patriots linebackers coach, former Quick Slants co-host, and all-around guy with great upside, about all of it. Here's Jerod.
So really, we're still a work in progress. We have a lot of new guys. And I would say if you look at our team historically, like we've had if you take like a 20-year slice, like very little turnover. We got a bunch of new guys and they're all good players, but we're still trying to figure each other out. I would say in saying that, there have been stretches this year that we played, I would say, pretty decent football, especially on the defensive side of the ball. If you look at it statistically, I'm sure we rank somewhere near the top in a bunch of categories. But you're right. We definitely have a long way to go. We have to get better. And we always talk about really, September, you're trying to figure yourself out. Even early October, you're trying to figure yourself out. And then November, hopefully November, December, January, you're playing your best football. And by no means do I think we're playing our best football as a team. We talk about complementary football, and I don't think we're playing our best defensively. And I think the rest of the guys understand that and know we have a long way to go and a lot of growth, and our ceiling is very high. So hopefully that answers your non-question.
It does. And I guess, too, when does the urgency hit where you're like, okay, you know what? Party's over. We're not new guys anymore. We've been doing this since July.
Yeah, I think the guys definitely have a sense of urgency, especially when, we have, our record, is where it is. I think guys know like every game is, we have to treat this like a playoff game. And, it's on us as coaches to instill that sense of urgency from all 3 phases of the game, for all 3 phases of the game.
Jerod, my question kind of piggybacks on that. About a month ago when we talked to you, you said definitively we'll be better in October and November than we are right now. Do you still have that confidence that the end result, the end game will be there?
I do. I still feel the same way. I mean, look, we're barely into, I guess almost midway through October at this point, but I do think we'll be better. I think we're getting better. I think the guys are, really starting to come together as far as, off the field, studying film, and also, just playing with one another. And we've had some guys go in and out as well. And even when you look at this past game, not trying to look in the past, like there were some plays out there which we should have been off the field, and it kind of extended drives. And, you take away 2 drives from last game and we're not even having this conversation, but we are, and we're here today. And, the only thing now we can do is look forward to playing against a very talented offense coming in here from the Cowboys.
Sticking with Jerod now, we asked him specifically, or not we, I think it was Andy Hart, specifically asked about slants. What the hell's going on there with the slants? Zing zang.
Honestly, I would say part of it just has to do with awareness, right? Awareness of the play. And so a lot of those have happened on short yardage plays, like 3rd and 1. And really, it's a run call. It's not just a normal slant pass. I don't want you guys to think they're just sitting back there and drop back pass and throwing a slant. It's a called run play, and it's what we call a look pass, and they just sling it out there. So we definitely, we've through self-scout and honestly through just being at the game, like we know that play is coming. We just got to play it better.
So 2 things are going on here with Jerod's answer to how come this Patriots team, as opposed to the other ones, hasn't fixed what is ailing them quite yet. And his answer is, guys are still getting enmeshed in the system and understanding what to do. And he also seems to catch himself with that, saying that that's still not an excuse. But the urgency of it, and that's something that we talked about with Ted Johnson the other day, we're going to continue to talk about. Bill Belichick has been a hanging judge for most of his career. Mistakes are unacceptable. Do your job, everything else. And it seems to me over the last couple of years, maybe it's related to the personalities of players these days. Maybe it's related to the pandemic. Maybe it's related to the softening of Bill Belichick. Maybe I'm inferring something that's not even there. But there seems to be a more, can't have that, but we'll get them next week mentality, as opposed to get the frig out of here with that shit. Phil, is Bill coaching his millennials differently?
I would say probably. And I would say it would be a mistake if he wasn't. And I think that's where I have fallen on this lately, talking to all the work that we do during the draft and talking to people, not only about skill sets and what plays in today's NFL, but personality types. And it's just different. The athlete today is different than the athlete that was in 2001, when Bill Belichick was trying to establish a program here. And he could swing that hammer whenever he wanted for a long time. And I just think I think it's different now. I don't think it's coddling, but I think it's adapting to the modern era. And people like Jerod Mayo have been very open and very, I think, upfront when talking about Bill Belichick and trying to go into detail on some of the things that he's changed. I remember talking about this with him when Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski decided they weren't going to OTAs anymore. And he said, listen, the culture is just it's not what the culture was back even when he started in 2008, because it couldn't be. And it wasn't just because he had 2 superstars that didn't feel like showing up in the spring. It was everybody was different. And it's just a different job now for Bill Belichick. And so I do wonder if that's part of it. But Tom, I feel like things like that, how could you not be urgent with ball security and mental mistakes? That's where I can't make that connection.
No, I understand that. And I think ball security is more complicated and nuanced than penalties. And not the penalties like J.C. Jackson had with the hold. The first one on the 3rd down, it sucked. He just got crossed up. He thought the Cooks was going to go the other way, and Cooks ran directly into him. He had to hug him. I didn't hate that hold. It sucked, timing. But the overrun by Devin, or the motion illegal shift by Jacoby Myers down the goal line, or the inability to get the right number of guys, on the field in a couple of different games, or busts in coverage that leave guys wholly uncovered, whether it's Kamara or, we saw Eau Claire score fairly easily this past weekend. The offenses are trying to put you in stressful situations. So I don't mind the Eau Claire one as much as I do mind the 10 guys on the field. So I guess the upshot is do you have faith that the Patriots are going to fix what ails them? Because I don't think it's over a 5-game stretch. I think this stretch has gone much longer. We've discussed that almost even back to 2018 before they got themselves right and won a Super Bowl. They had lost 5 games to teams that had losing records in the regular season or didn't go to the playoffs. Five times they lost in 2018. 2019 was, again, built on sand. 2020, they went 7-9. That actually was an overachieving team, I think, in some ways. This year, I think it's kind of a little bit underachieving. It's just there. It's just nebulous, ambiguous, enigmatic, whatever word you want to use. It means I can't figure out what the frig they are.
Was there anything we know outside of his sons? There may not be a person on the staff who's got as good a connection with Bill Belichick. I shouldn't say that. He's coached with a lot of those guys for a long time. Mayo and Belichick get along very well and have for a long time. Was there anything in that answer from Mayo that would lead you to believe that they are going to get it fixed?
Yeah.
Sounds like no.
I'm basing it on faith. I'm basing it on my faith in the guys like Mayo, like Belichick, like Hightower, like McCourty. I'm basing it on that. But I don't think Jerod's been a coach long enough, to be honest, to not have the optimism that is incumbent upon a coach to have. They're going to be better. They're going to commit fewer penalties. Yeah, I guess I have faith that they will. But does it happen when they're 3-6 or 4-5, or does it happen now? Because it kind of has to happen now.
It does. And it's just, just getting back to where we started in this particular topic, Mayo's optimism, that is more of a new age coaching approach. This isn't, Jim Mora at the podium playoffs. If you were to do that now, you'd have a bunch of guys in a locker room, and maybe this happened back then too, but I would say more likely now, if that were to happen and a coach reacted that way after a bad loss, that team was definitely going nowhere. Whereas back then, he probably hoped it was some sort of, motivational boost to a certain extent.
I think some of it is interesting too, is it's not just the guys who were born between 1995 and now. It's the guys who were born in the 80s. You don't want to do that to McCourty. You don't want to do that to Slater. You don't want to do that to Hightower. They have waded through some poop for you. They have walked and towed the line and your party line for a few years. You can't really put them on blast necessarily in their overall performance because you need them. You really need those guys. And I think that they are attuned, as Tom Brady was attuned, for instance, to criticism of Rob Gronkowski. Don't pick on him, Bill, just because you think you can. I think that was a big part of Brady in 2017 and 2018. Anyway, once I say Brady, I probably should get off and go to something else because people have had it with me in the Brady stuff. And I sometimes think to myself, I have to. So for today, we'll leave it alone. MVP candidate, though, at 44. Meanwhile, the fun factor, what? You're making noises.
Good. No, he looks good. Yeah. 5 touchdowns.
So let's do that, actually. Instead of going to the fun factor, let's first talk about the Dallas Cowboys and the challenge posed by them. Jerod Mayo, I asked him about that too. This is from the end of the conference call with Jerod when I asked him about Dallas.
Yeah, they're very good. If you look across the board, they have all these first round picks. They have the highest paid this, the highest paid that, and they're the highest paid for a reason. It starts up front. Well, I should say it starts at the quarterback position, but also up front with a bunch of good linemen, guys that have been playing for a long time, and Smith and Martin, all those guys that have played well. And then you look at the backs. I mean, there's really very minimal drop off as far as, Elliott compared to Pollard. And then that's not even talking about the outside players. The receivers, they all have specific skill sets. This is probably our biggest challenge to date.
Bigger than Tampa?
Bigger than Tampa because it's the next game.
You talk about a team that can put you in compromising situations with their personnel and talent.
No doubt about it. And I think really where you have to start is at the quarterback spot. Because I think even though Dak Prescott isn't where he was before the injury last year, where he was pretty explosive in terms of his movement, not just as a runner, but even in his ability to climb the pocket and navigate behind the line of scrimmage. But Tom, he is really accurate. He gets the football out quickly. I mean, I just rattled off some of the numbers in terms of air yards per attempt. They have great weapons. They're not throwing it down the field all that much. I think they're getting a fair amount of pressure. You have teams that know they have a decent running game, so they're trying to play the run on the way to the quarterback. And so maybe they're trying to speed up the Cowboys a little bit to get it out of his hands. But it doesn't matter. I mean, he's operating their offense like he's Patriots version Tom Brady or New Orleans version Drew Brees. And that's obviously high end, but that's kind of where he is right now. He's surgical. This isn't necessarily an offense that relies on throwing the ball 60 yards down the field to Amari Cooper. He's really accurate and he's smart. And I think it's gonna be hard for them to fool him. They might have to use a plan like the one they used against Brady and it would take that level of execution to slow this offense down, I think.
Which is very interesting because a mere 2 years ago, Dak Prescott in the rain here at Gillette Stadium, he looked pedestrian. He looked flustered. He looked like his fundamentals sucked. The Dallas Cowboys lost, I believe, 13-6. If I wasn't so lazy, I'd just open it up and double check that score. But
Amari Cooper got shut out, I think, right? Didn't
there was a
hold him to
pick out
zero
on the
catches?
side was it the fling out to the right? He was so pissed. Jerry Jones was at the end of that game, and that's a nice subtext to this week's matchup, the Jerry Jones-Robert Kraft comparison. But so pissed after that game that he basically lambasted Jason Garrett in the bowels of Gillette Stadium. So that was a seminal, or at least a watershed. I don't know. It was a big game. Put it that way. Let's stop with the big words, dum-dum. He's better now, huh?
He's better. I mean, who knows? If it starts to rain and it's cold, I mean, like maybe that's their best chance. You know, some teams just fold when they see that sort of stuff, especially these indoor teams, these warm weather teams. So, you know, you hope for weather, but he is very good. The receiving core is deep and talented. I don't know how you match up. You know, to me, off the top of my head, it would be J.C. Jackson on Amari Cooper and Jalen Mills on Michael Gallup, and then CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb might end up being the X factor here because he's really a slot receiver, but he's built like an X. So can you have the guy who on your defense is built like a slot receiver, a traditional slot receiver, and Jonathan Jones to match those quick guys on the inside? Can you match him on CeeDee Lamb, who might have, I'll have to look it up, but he's got to have several inches in height on Jonathan Jones. I don't know if that's a great matchup, but you might have to go with it because it's sort of all you got. And so maybe that's the matchup that ends up sort of determining this outcome. We haven't even talked about the running game. And I think Ezekiel Elliott's okay. He's a big name. I think Tony Pollard actually might be the better runner. And I think he was, especially early this year.
He said no drop off. So
very good. So
CeeDee Lamb, if I were the Patriots, I'd really make sure that CeeDee Lamb was the key to my defense because he is scary fast and scary explosive. So that would be one of the keys to my game plan. All right. Last thing, I'm going to bring in some sound here from Darrelle Revis. This is prior to, I'll send you the Van Noy interview after this. Phil, this is good stuff. But just before we do, here's Darrelle Revis speaking to Channing Crowder and Brandon Marshall on The Good Life about the Patriots. And fun, it's hard to hear a guy say he won a Super Bowl here and hated every minute of it.
Didn't enjoy it. I mean, doesn't it tell you to some extent what the guy's motivations are, really? You know, when it comes down to it. I know he was in that year.
He never says like it was worth it. It sucked, but it was worth it. He never really says that.
No. And listen, to his credit, he's sort of, you know, he's probably being honest. And that's kind of the way he comported himself over the course of his career. He was a businessman. Mm-hmm. And he made a lot of money and he was really smart in terms of how he did it. He was a great football player. He took really good care of himself for the bulk of his career until the very end. And he ended up coming here and winning a championship. But I remember, Tom, wasn't it LaFell?
Yes. Who after the Super Bowl said that they were driving away from the facility one day in the summer. It was both of their first seasons in New England. After OTA. Yeah. Oh, so it wasn't even the summer, it was the spring. We'd better win a freaking ring because this sucks. This is hard.
And, you do it for 1 year, you find out, okay, that was great. And then you go back to, making as much money as you can. And again, that's who he was. And so good on him, I guess, for at least being consistent, Tom. I'll give him credit for that, but it does sound weird. Like you're in it in theory to win Super Bowls. You didn't enjoy it that one time that you did.
I mean, spraying lawns wasn't fun for me in the 90s. I didn't love it, but it helped. I
mean, what if you
work ethic?
Yeah. What if you had been named like the best lawn sprayer in the world for 1991? Okay. That would have made it a little bit more of an enjoyable experience.
I mean, I didn't like
say I became a better person for it or something along those lines.
Getting up at 6:30, bathing myself in herbicides so my hair fell out. But fortunately, if my hair hadn't fallen out and I hadn't done that job, I'd have never met Doctors Leonard and Lopresti. 1-800-GET-HAIR. All right, Phil, let's send it to the Van Noy interview.
You think Darrelle Revis feels the same way about his Super Bowl ring as you do about your hair? Probably not even as good.
No,
definitely not. Okay, bye.
I kind of thought last week was a good win, a good loss. You look good against Tampa, and you said there's no such thing. Can I call this one a bad victory? Is there such a thing as those?
A win's a win, though.
A win is a win.
Hey,
a win is a win.
Yes.
But the interesting thing is, and we heard Bill Belichick talk about it in the post-game locker room, he said, we needed 60 minutes, we got 30. How much can you take that 30 positive minutes in the second half where you did, after that first drive of the second half, shut them down?
Yeah, I think that is exactly the momentum we want to go with, is that last 30 minutes was a good half. Obviously, it still wasn't our best half, but it was a good half, and it got the job done. I think we can propel that into a 60-minute game is what the boss wants and what we all want as players.
And I think when we talk about those 60 minutes, it's funny, there's snippets at the start of each half, I guess 5 minutes really at the start of each half, 10 minutes over the course of the game, where we've seen flatness, maybe back on your heels. Is that attributable to scheme, execution? What is it sometimes?
I don't know. I think that's a good question.
Do you guys notice it yourselves and say, why do we keep starting slow here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should definitely talk about it more and try to mix it up as for maybe players to try different tactics, do different things to get going. It's not something that we want to do. Coach preaches it all the time, and I think players need to take ownership in it and do what we need to get done to get off to a fast start. I mean, when you start off fast in games, it definitely does help, but then again, you have a game like ours where they started fast and we came back, or even the game last night with the Colts where you thought, oh man, like our guy Pat McAfee fell asleep, he said, and then woke up and was like, what happened? So you got it's all about finishing games though. And you definitely want to start fast. That definitely helps, but you definitely got to play 60 minutes.
Your guy, Jerod Mayo, talked today on a video conference, and our guy too, about where things are in terms of getting used to each other. And Josh McDaniels also talked about, okay, there's a process here, and there's a point at which you start to throw things out. You want to be able to do this, but there comes a point where you're like, well, we're not really able to do that. Let's get to the stuff we're good at and do that. Is that process still ongoing in your estimation from a player's viewpoint?
What did Mayo say?
Mayo said,
I didn't see what he said.
It was a very good answer. He didn't look for the excuse of, look, they're inexperienced and they're getting to know each other. He said, we still need that urgency in the course of that. But he said, look, we're still getting our feet under us in terms of understanding our skills. And with such maybe a versatile defense or a defense that does so many different things, it can be complicated, I would guess.
Yeah, I think he explained that really well from what you're saying. I think you hit it right where it needs to be is the word with urgency. Definitely need to have more urgency as a group, offense, defense, and special teams. I think the more urgency we have each and every week, the results will continue to be what we want. And we just got to propel that each week.
You got your guy, Jamie Collins, back.
Yeah, 3 plays and a sack.
Did you like it?
Man, This is what he does right
I love that. Well, I got to have some kind of a move. See, that's what you do when you go to when you watch your Elite
right
Eats.
there.
If I can go out to Elite Eats with my guy,
there we go.
Kyle Van Noy, I'll be doing this afterwards. My family calls that a full meatball. But he had a full meatball after a nice sack of Davis Mills. Did he hit the ground running, and what kind of a weapon is he going to be for you guys?
You know, I think you guys saw it right there. Just he's impactful when he gets on the field, and he's great to have in the locker room. You know, he's one of the guys, and I think hopefully we see more of that, and hope we can all bring that same juice that he brought.
Being a New England Patriot, in my years covering the team, obviously you don't get the same experience writing about it as you do playing for them. But being a New England Patriot is a unique experience, and I think Collins is a good example of it.
Yeah.
3 different tours of duty here. Darrelle Revis is another guy who had a short tour of duty, one of the greatest cornerbacks of all time. He'll be a Hall of Famer. He was with the Patriots for a year. He won a Super Bowl, but he spoke this week about his experience as a Patriot. Give me your full unvarnished reaction to all of it, because there's probably no real lies there. It's his own experience.
Yeah, it's definitely his own experience. I mean, everyone's experience is different. I think he said something that was important. It's a different philosophy, and that doesn't align with everybody else's philosophy. I think it's his opinion, and he has every right to have that opinion. Obviously, it would be different from mine. Obviously, I don't have great days like not every day is a great day at work, and not every day is a bad. But for the most part, for me, my time and experience has been good.
You could take guys who seem as close and similar as a Danny Amendola and a Julian Edelman.
Yeah.
Both of whom I'm sure you consider friends. I
They are.
get along great with them.
Yeah.
I think Danny Amendola, probably at the end of his time here, held a view much more like Darrelle Revis's.
Yeah.
And Julian Edelman would, meanwhile, never breathe a harsh word. So everybody can have
Foxborough forever.
100%. So he has that built-in, look, I want it to be hard. I want it to be miserable. Bring it on.
Yeah.
Shovel it on me. And some guys, maybe they I'm not going to say they can't take it, because certainly you guys are mentally and physically tough enough to take it.
Yeah.
It's just, do you like that kind of workplace?
Yeah, I think some people thrive in it. Some people relish in it. Some people don't. Some people do it because they have to, and it is what it is.
Do you take any offense when a guy says something like that publicly and then it gets some run? Because it's, you're part of this fraternity which would be the Patriots.
Yeah, it's tough to say because that was his year.
But so you don't say, "Oh, screw that guy." I mean, he didn't know what he's talking.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the right thing to do, because I think, for one, as a player, past and present, we all need to do a better job of, kind of, I would say, what's the right word? Protect each other, or
respect
each other. Exactly. I think the older generation, we as a NFL player, we need to do better of knowing our history and respecting the players of the past. And I think the past players need to respect the players now. I mean, that's just.
I think that's a good point, because sometimes the respecting the players now, when we hear people say that, well, the rules are so different that these guys couldn't compete in the 70s.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jack Lambert, as great as he was, weighed 210 pounds.
playing guard and tackle.
So, I mean, it's not that if Jack Lambert was born in 1995, he couldn't play, but the game was different. All of it's different. So
you can make the argument some past players couldn't keep up with the speed today.
Jack Lambert could not play linebacker at 210 pounds, and he's a Hall of Famer and a generational great.
Yeah. So you can make that argument and cases for a lot of things. I just think as players, we need to do a better job of respecting, people's grinds and what they went through, and you don't necessarily know what those people went through and some of those players to do what they needed to do. So, yeah.
You got a big grind coming up this week with the Dallas Cowboys.
We do.
Another thing Mayo said today was, he said, this is the most talented team you guys have faced offensively so far. I said, what about Brady? What about Brady? What about Brady? He said, it's the most difficult team because it's the next team. Good by him, huh?
That is smart. He's smooth.
How talented is this team?
Very talented. I think they do a good job. Obviously, Dak is showing why he deserved that contract for sure. I mean, he's a hell of a quarterback right now. you got a freaking 1-2 punch combo with Pollard and Elliott, and Elliott's my boy since we have the same esports company, XSET. Shout out XSET. Those two are really good at what they do. And then you got CD, you got Amari Cooper, the silent assassin. That boy's nice.
Gallup.
He's been banged
Maybe
up a
he's
little
been banged
bit?
up.
Yeah.
I haven't got
But their
to
can't forget about their O-line too.
They're loaded.
Got to give them love. They're really good at what they do and have been for a long time.